So I'm talking about May 2019, what we have in store. We have a couple full moons, new moons, and all kinds of cool stuff ahead. So check it out. Okay, so here we are at the Sam Jeppy headquarters in beautiful San Diego. Going to be talking about the month of May 2019. You see we have the May 2019 forecast queued up here, and we're April 25th. We're today, so we're going to move this forward and look at it here. Now, see, this isn't changing. All right, so we're just going to be looking at May 2019, which is starting next Wednesday. This is like 9:35 San Diego time. So, got a big month ahead, of course. You know, a lot of changes going on in the world. This last month has been very transformative, as I had said. You know, I've done a couple 2019 predictions. Long videos, also ones where I just predicted the nodes changing, and in all of them, I said that this, end of March through mid-April was going to be a lot of shifting happening that's going to literally change the world, like at that time, and not just change things at that time, but it's going to shift our total realities. Think about last month where we were. We hadn't had the big changes, for example, like, the Brexit thing and the first Mueller report had just been leaked, or it had just been released but not fully understood. A lot of other things hadn't fully happened yet. Again, there was a thing with Brexit. We didn't have the Notre Dame fire. We didn't have all the stuff that's happened in the last month. There's been a lot of big shifts, a lot of things that have changed quite a bit of perspectives. You can look politically as well in the US and in other places around the world. Just a lot of shifting and changing going on in April, mainly because the nodes changed and moved from where they had been for the previous year and a half. Rahu is now in Gemini, and Ketu is in Sagittarius, and Ketu is right with Saturn. Look at these exact degrees. This is what we talked about. This is what I talked about at the beginning of the year. And so far, we're now starting to really see this restriction, this destruction, this potential destruction of this Ketu Saturn. The commitment to rebuild our systems and structures of worship, our belief systems. Harder to maintain, harder to hang on to those belief systems. Again, belief systems are Sagittarius. Harder to hang on to them is the Saturn Ketu, because Saturn and Ketu are both destructive. They're both destructive, difficult energies, and we're seeing those qualities of our hopes and beliefs, which are based on something very intangible, brought into the tangible world of change and destruction. It's been happening for the last couple of years with Saturn going through Sagittarius, but now with Ketu also there. Again, this is literally shown by the burning of the churches. And it's not just Notre Dame. Notre Dame was the most flagrant sort of conflagration. Wasn't just Notre Dame. There was also a fire in a very famous mosque in Jerusalem the same day. There's also been a spate of black churches being burned in the U.S., literal, like, religious crimes. Also, we had the terrible bombing in Sri Lanka on Easter, right? Christians being persecuted and attacked. Again, Muslims as well, and at least rhetorically, and if not literally, have also been targets. Religion in general, again, I don't want to incite anyone, because it's the notion and the ideas that we're seeing. And of course, this is the backdrop for where we're at right now. And again, this was predicted. I'm just not saying it because I'm trying to look good. I'm just saying that it's obvious that astrology was showing this was going to happen. I've been talking about Pope Francis, the Catholic Church, the Muslims. and the Muslim faith, tolerance and intolerance. So both religious tolerance and religious intolerance, that theme is powerful right now and popping. And again, not just religion, but also things like politics, power structures. Because one of the biggest problems in the world now, one might argue, is that we've elevated political figures to these figures of worship. Like we worship the political figure or the ideology that we think is going to save us. It's the same kind of Jupiterian sort of illusion, actually. Because this world is not the kingdom of God. This world is the kingdom of man. And we have laws, and we have a government. And that's how we see the Sagittarian principle on earth. Again, we have a church, which is a place where we go, let's say, to worship. But again, true religion and spirituality is in the heart. It's not something of this earth. Every great religious teacher has taught that. Same way with the world that we live in and the culture we share and the laws that govern it and the government that is there. This is all very Sagittarius energy. It's the Kshatriyas. Again, Leo is like the king. Sagittarius is like the minister or the prevailing philosophies of the government and culture and world. And Aries is literally like the sort of army or the military or the sort of, hammer of retribution or, punishment or whatever you might think. And so these are all things that is, that's sort of a backdrop for what are big themes right now in the world. And we're seeing a lot of these things shifting as we recently have in the last few weeks. So we can see that we start May with the moon here in. So I'm just looking here. Okay, with the moon in Pisces, right? So it's moving its way up this week. As I record this now, the moon is at the end of Sagittarius and moving into Capricorn. Jupiter's gone retrograde back into Scorpio. So again, what I said even earlier this week, I predicted that hopefully we're going to see less of the explosive fire blow-ups like we've seen, fires of Notre Dame, fire on Easter in Sri Lanka. Again, that Jupiter in the fire sign. And in the Gandanta point between Mula and Jeshta. When it's in the Mula part and the Sagittarius part, it's the blow-up explosiveness. I even predicted and said Jupiter going back into Scorpio, we could very well see more things, for example, disasters and stuff related to water. And also even politically and globally, rather than seeing explosive kind of activities and accusations, there's still going to be some of that, but you might see more kind of secret alliances and undercutting and manipulation. Literally the day after I said that, it was announced that Putin and Kim Jong-un were going to have a meeting. Again, this is, in fact, they even literally talked about this, like some secret meetings, or not that that's secret, right? It's not secret, but what, the secret part is what they talk about and what they're cooking up behind the scenes, right? Again, not like it's something sinister, but seeing these kind of secretive alliances and things that we don't really know what's going on, more mysterious kind of, power exchanges. So hopefully we will not see so much, explosive, deadly activities, and instead we'll see, some cooperation and some sort of backroom maneuvering that winds up being, beneficial. We even saw, for example, in the in the big political, scheme or scandal in the U.S. that, the Mueller investigation, what we have now is subpoenas asking them to come forward and speak before the Congress, and the White House now stonewalling and saying, no, we're just not going to honor it. We're not going to follow the law because it's lawful. It's a lawful subpoena. By the way, not to get too political, but this was one of the things Nixon was impeached for, was failure to adhere to the law. It's the law that the Congress can bring people before them. Again, we have to understand these aren't opinions. whether you like, let's say, the president or not, he can't break the law. He held an oath to uphold the laws. The laws are, if the Congress subpoenas you or your agents to come and speak, that's their job. That's the law. It's called oversight. It's like saying, no, I'm not going to appear in court. You cannot appear in court, but you're breaking the law. And you're not allowed to break the law, particularly if you're the president, you're sworn to uphold the law, whether you like it or not. Every president has had to subject his cabinet to subpoenas. Obama was investigated many times, something like 8 Benghazi investigations, and his cabinet complied because it's the law. You're not allowed to break the law. So again, people should just understand this stuff that's happening right now. It's almost like Donald Trump, for example, wants to be impeached, or he just doesn't understand. You can't just flagrantly even come out and say, no, we're not going to cooperate with the House. Okay, you're basically saying, I'm going to break the law. And that's an impeachable offense. It was one of Nixon's, when Nixon refused to turn over the tapes, that was an article of impeachment because he was breaking the law. It's clear. It's not even a matter of opinion. So anyway, not to get off on that, but this is the kind of thing I mean, like saying, no, I'm not going to comply. Again, this is a kind of Scorpio sort of thing, where instead of being overtly something blowing up and here is the thing going, again, I'm talking somewhat globally and politically and whatnot now, but think about it in your own life as well. Use it in your own life as a metaphor for your own life. Maybe the last month or so, there's been a lot of obvious things happening, a lot of, if you might say, obvious things maybe blowing up or obvious areas in your life where you believe in something, but that belief is kind of wearing out. Now it's more covert. Now it's like maybe the cooperation that you would expect, let's say, to get from others isn't coming, or the cooperation they expected to get from you isn't coming. So they're becoming more like obstinate or difficult or something like that. And again, this is also part of Scorpio. It's a fixed water sign. It's that, no, I'm not going to do it. Again, you better be careful with that because it's fixed water, which is about not being, pliable and saying, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. So this kind of fixed stubbornness is also going to be now brought into the realm of the issues that we were talking about earlier with the, with the burning of the temples and the explosions and all of those flagrant outer manifestations. And yeah, someone said ice. I always use this example about Scorpio as being, it has this icy facade on the surface because the way to stabilize water and fix water and stabilize is to freeze it. So this is why you often see Scorpio, and even people that have Scorpio, let's say rising or a lot of planets there, there's often this kind of icy, cool facade. But then you get to know them, and underneath it all, it's this almost sort of volcanic emotional energy that's underneath of it. And then the more you get to know them and the more you penetrate into that, and that cold water sort of heats up, again, then underneath it's sort of like boiling. It's kind of like fire and ice, right? So these are the things to understand right now about the Jupiterian part of the equation. So again, this is where we kind of start with the May forecast, right? And so I see there being more subversive kinds of things, and maybe even plots hopefully are uncovered or foiled, and things like that. So let's go through, the general days of the month. By the way, I do have daily forecasts where you can get, there's a link in the video, and I'll just copy it here and paste it in the chat for those who are live. But again, I've had thousands of members over the years. It's currently usually about 100 to 150 members who get daily forecasts, not just from me, but from one of my advanced students, Jeff Poole, as well, where he gives detailed, comprehensive daily forecasts, and so that you can stay on top of this every day. And again, not just with the hang on a second, and not just with the, there we go, it's going to change, with the day, and not just with where the sun is or where the moon is, but how it changes. Like if you see right here, as I move this, it's changing each day. This is the Indian calendar. It's called the Panchanga, and you'll see there's a different month. There's a different Tithi, which is Krishna Triadashi. That's the second day. It starts on May 1st, which is Krishna Dwadashi. Dwadashi is the 12th lunar day. It's Wednesday, which is ruled by Mercury. The nakshatra is Uttara Bhadra. And also the moon is joined Venus and Mercury. Again, each day I do a detailed forecast of all of these factors. The moon is in Pisces. It's in Uttara Bhadrapada. It's with Mercury and Venus. It's the 12th lunar day, and it's Wednesday. Those are the 5 parts that I evaluate every day. Again, that would be May 1st. May 2nd, we still have the moon in Pisces. It's still joined Venus and Mercury, but now it's Krishna Triadashi, which is the 13th lunar day, and it's Thursday, and the nakshatra is Revati. Those things change every day. So every day there's a different flavor, even if the moon's in Pisces. It's different. It's a different day, different nakshatra. Moon is in a different nakshatra every day. Every 2.5 days, it's in a different sign, a different rashi. Every day is a different day of the week, and it's a different tithi or lunar phase. Now, I want you to understand something too. Actually, before I get into this, these days never repeat. You want to understand something. The qualities repeat, but that moment in time where you have the sun here, Mars here, Jupiter retrograde here, Saturn retrograde here with Ketu, Moon, Venus here in this nakshatra, that never repeats. Every day is totally unique. So looking into the specifics of these energies is what is necessary in life. It's what we're supposed to do in life. We're supposed to do these, we're supposed to be in contact with the daily weather and the energetic weather. And so again, that's what I do every day. So just notice that, and notice how much you're living your life in harmony with these daily energies, with this cosmic weather. And again, if you're not, then even in the classics it's as if you're blind. You're literally, for the Brahmins, for the educated people, a knowledge of Jyotish, the science of light, and the understanding of your awareness is necessary. If not, it's like you're blind. You're walking around blind. You don't understand what's going on. And it says, and it's even about the different hells, the hell called Raurava, and different things that says it's just a real sort of curse is the word they use. I don't like using that English word. The curse doesn't mean you're cursed. It's nothing. It's not like devils. It just means, again, we're all walking around with what we would call curses in a modern psychological sense. They used words like that before because they believed in the spirits that come into your mind and that darken the soul. Because we have this pure soul nature, and those things that darken the soul are what you would call like a curse. This is kind of the way it works. And they're just the negative karmic tendencies, the difficult samskaras in our mind. And so again, we're not meant to be cursed. We have a science like Jyotish, the science of light, so that we can understand the light, see ourselves as a being of light. And once you see yourself as a being of light, you're no longer scared of things like the curses and the dark and the devils and the demons and all the stuff that you might be paranoid about. And again, I see this all the time, and this false idea that we're cursed or that we have all this stuff, none of that is actually real. That's what they're describing in the Jyotish text when they say, for the Brahmin, a knowledge of Jyotish is necessary. Which means if you're going to study and learn, you have to learn the truthful thing, not some weird corrupted version of it. If you do learn a weird corrupted version of it, it's like you're in hell and being descended upon by these negative entities. But it's actually your mind creating it because you don't understand the truth, because you don't understand the Jyoti, because you don't have a knowledge of Jyotish. Instead, you have a limited knowledge, and you've learned about it in this kind of way that's not really helping you. And so those are the hells that we're in. even when that happens. It's better to not have any answer than to have the wrong answer. So just to keep that in mind, we're supposed to know this, and we're supposed to understand the universe that we live in. This is why I not only do daily forecasts, but I have courses that teach this stuff to people so that you really understand it. It's not just a something that you're hoping is going to help you. Meanwhile, you're just in this light and dark, this play of light and dark. So let's get right to the forecast here now after, after 20 minutes, 23 minutes. Okay. So you can see I enjoy what I'm doing. So I like talking about this stuff. It's very interesting times. And we see that the month starts May 1st and 2nd with the moon in Pisces, right? And it's joined moon and Venus. It's joined Venus and Mercury. Now again, we have Mercury in the debilitated state, Venus in the exalted state, so that's called Nichabanga Yoga. So again, one of the things just to know about this beginning of the month, a lot of creative potential, as well as sort of mystical creative potential, where we're able to, really not just create something beautiful for this earth, but to really understand the soul's path and create something beautiful for the soul on a soul level. Now, again, this includes things like beautiful music, beautiful art. And what it means is that the things that we find beautiful, which is Venus, will have a sublime quality during that time. Actually, the whole time that Venus and Mercury are joined, the whole time Venus is exalted, there's a high capacity for that. But then when the moon joins it, your mind is now in that realm of life. So on May 1st and 2nd, and into the 3rd, well into the 3rd, there's going to be a very high capacity for that mystical, metaphysical communion with God. And especially if you're a creative person or an artistic person, it's a great time to be doing that. It's a great time to be creating something beautiful and artistic that you benefit from and your spiritual community benefits from, or whatever. That's Mercury and Venus join the moon in Pisces. And again, also Jupiter is aspecting, especially on May 2nd, this Jupiter is also aspecting the moon as it transits. So that's going to be really powerful for your sense of purpose and your teachings and gurus and whatnot as well. So especially May 2nd, write it down. It'll be a very spiritual day where you can really connect with your nature as spirit and consciousness and creativity. Then as you see on May 3rd, especially around the middle of the day in much of the world, but on the West Coast it's for most of the day. The moon is in Aries, Ashwini Nakshatra, and again May 3rd, 4th, and much of the 5th. So again, you can see it about 2.5 days. 3rd, 4th, and 5th, let's say, for the most part, the moon is in Aries. So again, that starts a new cycle of energy. Aries is about the new cycle. Pisces is about letting go and surrendering into that higher communion with God. Now again, even when I described Pisces, I said it in general, and I talked about Mercury, Venus, but the nakshatras are very important. Uttarabhadra is very different than Revati. Same way with Aries. And, it's 3 days that the moon is in Aries. It's new. There's the new moon on the 4th, but there's 3 nakshatras. It's Ashwini, Bharani, and Kritika. And by the way, let's just be very clear. I'm very clear now to say it intentionally. In every Vedic astrology text, the nakshatras and the zodiac signs are completely aligned. There is no tropical zodiac in Vedic astrology. Never did it. It's not even an open question, really. Some people want to do it, but they're not really doing what the Vedic seers and rishis did, and very clearly laid out this system of alignment where nakshatras and rashis are completely aligned, right? So again, with the moon in Aries on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, there's that energy, there's that energetic feeling of beginning and renewal. So it's a good day this is a good time to start something new, that spirit of renewal, of energy, of power and purpose on those days. On the 4th, it's a new moon. So again, one of the things about the new moon in Aries, when the moon is new, it's actually the mind feels kind of depleted. So even though there's going to be this energetic of Aries to want to do something, in the mind, we're going to feel kind of maybe a little bit, if not worn out, just kind of, not so enthusiastic. Because when the moon is new, it's dark, it's depleted. As you see, the sun is 20 and the moon is 16. So when the moon is really dark, you can't see the moon in the sky. This is what the new moon day is. And by the way, this is why there are 12 months in a year. Because there are 12 of these new moons, 12 of these lunation cycles every year, approximately, most of the time. 360, right? So this is why there are 12 months, right? It has actually nothing to do with the Earth going around the sun. It's not tropical months. They joined tropical months at some point in the Middle Ages, but the months are related to the sun-moon connection, not the Earth going around the sun. Months are created by the sun and moon coming together. And by the way, the entire Indian system of timekeeping called the Panchanga, which we're looking at down here, is also based on the sun and the moon coming together and viewing it from where we are on Earth. There are things like Nitya yogas, like you see this yoga. This is a Nitya yoga, which means a sun-moon yoga. Of course, nakshatras, all of it is sidereal. It's all measured sidereally like everything. So again, these things aren't even an issue. I'm just bringing it up because there are students that watch. So these 12 cycles are starting, one of the 12 cycles, the cycle of Aries for 2019, is starting on May 4th because sun and moon come together in Aries. So it's that spirit of initiation through the body and spirit. But then the mind and emotions, which is the moon, is feeling kind of dark at that time. And you might not really feel like it so much. So be careful not to get irritable and irritated at that time, especially. That's always kind of the case when moon is in Aries, but especially when it's also really dark, because then it's quite depleted. It's not bright. And brightness is one of the most important balas or strengths of the moon. Brightness is probably the most important. So again, May 3rd, 4th, and 5th, a sense of enthusiasm and passion, especially on the 3rd, you would say, because that's moon going into Aries in Ashwini. Boom. Then the 4th, you might start to feel a little depleted. The 5th, you're kind of building it back up again. But then halfway through the 5th, the moon also goes into Taurus. So it starts to really build itself up by the 5th. Or at least by the 6th and the 7th, the moon is in Taurus. And this is where the moon is in its exalted sign. So May 6th and 7th, one second. The moon is in Taurus. Now, moon is in Taurus because this is where the restless mind, the restless nature of the mind, becomes stable. Because Taurus is the most stable sign. It's fixed earth, right? So it's where that nature of the moon and the restless mind is settled. So it's often a time when, we can feel easily contented with what we have in our life. And that's really one of the biggest things that makes the moon and the mind strong, is we feel content with what we have rather than feeling like we need to chase something else externally. So, and again, much of the contentment and peace that we get is with our family, our friends, the things around us that are those solid things that we can count on and we can rely on. And again, those are all related to Taurus. So again, you'll really feel that May 6th and 7th. And it's also, especially on the 7th, Jupiter will be aspecting. So May 7th, mark it down. That's another good day for things, especially like teachings, being inspired, connecting your sense of peace and contentment with something bigger and something beyond. That's not just about, eating your favorite food or being around the person you like or some kind of comfort zone, because sometimes we can be very stuck at that time. And Taurus, we can get kind of stuck in the pleasure and the form of something and lose the essence of it. I often talk about the essence of something more than the form. But you want to understand that something like our comfort zone and whatnot has a lot of forms. Comfort food, comfortable people, and sometimes we can just want to stay, and we stay stuck in it, right? So this aspect from Jupiter in Scorpio, especially on the 7th, can really tend to take us out of that, okay? And then we go forward on the 8th, notice now the moon is going to cross and get very close to Mars. On the 8th, it goes into Gemini, 8th and 9th, and part of the 10th, but mainly the 8th and the 9th, we're going to see the moon in Gemini. Again, it's joined Mars and Rahu. It's closer to Mars on the 8th and Rahu on the 9th. It's right with Rahu on the 9th. So first it's Gemini for those 2 days. Moon in Gemini is about exploring our interests, communicating, being flexible, trying new things, right? Not just falling back on our old beliefs. Again, it's opposite Sagittarius, which is what we believe. And again, our beliefs tend to not change easily because we get a lot out of them, because they give our life a focus. What you believe is a lot of what you're pursuing. So Gemini says, I don't care about what I believe. I want to know what's true. And even if what is true overturns my belief, it's better to know the truth than to just be following a blind belief, a blind leader, a blind religion, a blind cultural, political, value system. Again, this is why, like I said at the beginning, all those things are getting so disrupted right now because of the nodes changing, and especially K2 and Saturn trying to just take a jackhammer to all the things we believe. This is why all of your beliefs are in question, including your entire worldview. Your entire worldview. Like, I thought this was the world. K2 Saturn and Sagittarius are going, really? And so, again, Gemini is about questioning that, right? So, again, on the 8th, it's going to be very close to Mars, which can bring some frustration as those things change. And again, Gemini is just about the things changing and not really sure. One of the problems with Gemini is we don't have a strong value system. One thing you can understand is as each sign moves to the next, in some ways it's kind of totally anathema to the sign before it. Like in some ways, Gemini has nothing to do with Taurus. Taurus is about things that are stuck and steady. Gemini is about things changing all the time based on almost no values. Everything is of equal value to begin with in Gemini. But the continuity between the signs actually is what the nakshatras are about. So again, this is one of the things that you also deeply understand once you start to learn the connection of the zodiac and nakshatras and rashis being in the same space. The continuity between Taurus and Gemini is actually shown by the nakshatra of Mrigashira. And again, this isn't my opinion, it's right in the text. It says nakshatras and rashis are aligned, so they don't have to make an explicit statement. And it's also why you have this thing called Gandanta. When the Rashi and Nakshatra both stop, there's a very hard stop. There's not the continuity, there's not the flow that you have between every other Nakshatra. Like we're looking at down here with this Jeshta Mula Gandanta. It's where Nakshatra and Rashi stop. That's why it's this sudden transformative energy where everything stops. Again, even though Taurus and Gemini don't have much to do with each other, they're very different, if not almost contrary. The nakshatra of Mrigashira shows the things that are common between the two. Just keep this in mind, right? So again, with Gemini, these couple of days, the 8th and the 9th, when the moon, especially on the 8th, it's very close to Mars, which is ready to blow up and kind of destroy some ideas so that we can understand things better, not just believe in them. And then on the 9th, when the moon is very close to Rahu, Rahu is also quite explosive, but it's not explosive in an angry way, it's just transformative. It's just like things shift suddenly. So again, May 9th, really notice there could be some very, again, it often looks explosive. It's not because it's necessarily fiery explosive, but it's transformative and shocking. And in fact, it might even have to do with more disclosures of information or something. There could be, like, for example, I'm just saying this now, and it's kind of a prediction, but not really, but there's going to be like hearings, and there's so much disclosures of information right now. I would not be surprised at all if on May 8th and 9th, we get another level of shocking disclosure where maybe they're having some hearings by then, let's say in the U.S. Senate, and these days are when there's some big bombshells dropped, where you literally hear some of the people that were involved in the recent disclosures sit down and actually say it, and say things like, well, the president told me to do this and I didn't do it because it was a crime, or some other kind of just shocking blow up disclosure happened on the 8th and the 9th, particularly the 9th with Moon Rahu. So we'll go back and look at this and see what kind of thing happened on May 9th relative to shocking, transformative disclosures of information. So you can also, again, you can look at these things as in your own life. Again, some people, they don't like some, to some extent, they get a little upset because I talk about politics, and especially in a way that if they don't like it and they're like, why don't you leave politics out or whatever? I certainly have views, but I'm mainly trying to refer just to things that we can see. The problem now is that people are so wedded to their beliefs about things that you can't even say something true often without triggering people because they don't like the truth. Whether people like, for example, Trump or not, the truth is these things are happening. Again, whether I like him or don't like it, or you believe it or don't, or like it or not like it, doesn't mean it's not real. And this is exactly what I've been saying about the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. Whether we like it or not, or believe he's innocent or guilty or whatever, these things are happening. So the reason to refer to world events is because we have an example. We have examples of these things happening. But that's not the only usage of it. I'm also talking about these things in your life. And use the examples in your life of, again, things that you believe that are getting changed and transformed really wildly. And where you're not in control of it and stuff like that. Okay? So again, a lot going up in this part of the zodiac, right? We come down here, there's not as many planetary conjunctions and whatnot. So it'll go a little quicker. Again, now May 10th, 11th, the moon is in Cancer. Now it is getting an aspect from Jupiter here, which also brings some of that God's grace, especially on the 11th. But May 10th and 11th, moon in Cancer, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of connection to the heart, family. It's a good time for really nurturing your family, and again, being in those environments where you can give selfless love. Caring for animals and pets is a big thing with the moon in Cancer. That selfless love, that selfless nurturing. Not the relationship nurturing, not the give and take, the equality of relationships of the Libra, but the selfless love and nurturing of Cancer. That's going to be important May 10th and 11th. Especially May 11th, aspect from Jupiter, from Guru, can also show another great day for putting your teachings into practice, following your gurus and teachers. And then May 12th and 13th, the moon is in Leo. Again, moon in Leo is about power structures, which includes things like governments and but also in your life, it's about your power structure. Like it's often related to your home and your money and your finances and income and things that give you power. Okay? But aside from that, it's also how you share your power, which is what's supposed to happen. Just like with Cancer, it's not just about the love we get, it's actually the love we give is the real power in Cancer, without expectation. The highest quality of Leo as well is about the power we can give. And again, this is why we love leaders who are generous, who give because of the joy of giving. We look to presidents and leaders of business or whatever to see how much joy they have to give, not just to receive. And a bad king is interested in himself and all the power he can take from the kingdom, all the power and attention he can extract from people and say, worship me, I'm the powerful one, and dominate with his power, rather than a good king who shares his power because he wants the kingdom to benefit rather than him personally to benefit. So these are all things that are important in Leo, and for those days on the 12th and 13th, those will be important themes. And again, there could be issues, there could definitely be things that are related to the government and the power structures of the world that you see in the news, but see it in your own life as well. If you're a business person or doing anything like that, it's a great day to share. These are great days to share and put it out there. And on May 14th and 15th and into the 16th, 14, 15, and part of the 16th. Again, this is in general around the world too. The moon is in the moon is in Virgo. So Virgo is where we take that power of the kingdom, then we organize that in a very practical way. Again, when a king is just worried about taking everything from the kingdom, he's usually not good with delegating. He's usually, because he wants the power, he wants to call all the shots. Now, Virgo is where we know how to delegate. And again, it's actually one of the most important metaphors for Virgo is also things like the intestines and the wisdom of the body. Notice how all you need to do with your food is just eat your food, stick it in your mouth, and enjoy it. And then your body does the rest. Literally, your body has all the wisdom of the cosmos folded into it. And a lot of it is that kind of Virgo energy. Again, Leo is where Leo is the stomach. It's the fire in the belly that digests the food, let's say. But then it goes into the Virgo, where Virgo takes all of that digested and all that power, or all that potential energy and power, and actually turns it into power by digesting and taking every little piece and every granule and every molecule and sending it where it's supposed to go. This is why it's related to the intestines and how the energy and food is distributed throughout the body. That's what Virgo is really good at. This goes here, that goes there, this goes here, that goes there. So this is why it's a little bit fussy. It's a little bit worried about things not being perfect. You might send the wrong thing to the wrong place, and then the whole system can crash. So May 14th and 15th, that is going to be important, right? And, this is about things like cleaning, arranging, maybe, planting in your garden or doing some things to beautify your home environment. It's also, again, good for things like study and precise work that builds your kingdom. So what's your kingdom? We all have a kingdom. How does your kingdom work? And what habits and details are you not looking at very well, right? And then that leads to Libra, which is, for 2.5 days or so, from about the middle of the 15th to the 16th, the middle of the 16th and the 17th and much of the 18th. So like 16, 17, 18, moon is in Libra. So now after all of that organization of Virgo, we have the people skills of Libra. Now it can't be just about all of the details. Now it's about connecting it with people, right? And we have the people in our life. And so again, Libra now is going to be a time on the 16th, 17th, and much of the 18th where there's a theme of relationships, other people, and compromise, right? So it's opposite Aries, where we're all about our own power and individuality. Libra is about, no, I can also accommodate you, and I want you to be happy, and I want you to also respect me and respect the things I'm willing to do in order to get along with you. So Libra is that balance, that balancing point, all right? And so on the 16th, 17th, and much of the 18th, there'll be a strong quality of Libra in our life, right? Where we'll be looking for opportunities to connect with others. Much of it is because of desires, because we want the connection. So you want to understand this about your relationships. As much as you might complain and cry about your partnerships, you're in it because of what you're getting from it. You're not a martyr. You're not so great. You're not selfless at all in your relationships. You are totally in it for yourself. But you're totally in it for the part of yourself that enjoys the connection and that enjoys accommodating, and that also enjoys getting what you get from doing it. Getting what you get from accommodating. And of course, one of the big things we get is, let's be honest, sex. So, and again, sex for a human being is much deeper than it is for an animal, because it's also connected to the heart. It's connected to a deeper source of beauty that we can cognize through our sophisticated brains and all of that stuff, right? So there's much more implicit in all of that. And Libra is that sign. So I'm talking about this because while the moon is going through Libra, it's also aspecting Venus and Mercury from Aries, which again, this is quite a sexual position. Right? Sexual position. Sexual placement, maybe I would say. A little better. Because Venus, especially in Aries, is quite sexual in that regard, and Mars and Mercury are exchanging here. So again, having them opposite could show a lot of draw towards sexuality and even bringing you back into connection with partners because of wanting that connection. And so these days, on the 16th, 17th, and much of the 18th, there could be a lot of that desire as well. So it's also very possible and likely and necessary to transform it into something higher, and not just about your personal desires, but something that's more universal. This is why the highest quality of Libra is actually something much more social and much more elevated beyond just our personal desire. And by the way, these things are shown by the nakshatras, as I had said before. One nakshatra bridges the next, and one life lesson bridges the next. There's a continuity in the zodiac, and hard stops on the fire and water signs. There's a hard stop, but between the other signs there's the bridge. And for example, the bridge of Libra toward the next lesson is shown in the nakshatra of Vishaka. The bridge between Virgo and Libra is shown through the nakshatra of Chitra, etc. So it's very specific. We don't have to guess, right? Just follow what's very clearly in all the texts. And this is not even a hard one. So that's why it's so odd that this movement has sprung up. Not to get too into that, but it's just very true to those of us who, it's not just because we don't know what we're doing, it's because it's so clear and so obvious when you interpret these things. So again, that movement from Libra into Scorpio is shown very clearly by the qualities of Vishaka Nakshatra, right? That it's literally the last degrees of Libra where our relationships are becoming something much larger, much bigger than just our personal happiness, something more social, something more related to even things like cultural issues and social justice, and how that goes into Scorpio, and the early degrees of Scorpio, which also have to do with transforming our own insecurities until we can really step up. And then the middle section of Scorpio is the Anuradha Nakshatra, which is connecting those things to the heart. And then the last section of Scorpio is literally the nakshatra of Jyeshta, which has to do with like the king, or the willingness and the courage to fight for what we've transformed, right? And to transform ourselves and then be like that, be that spiritual warrior in Jyeshta. So again, this is the whole continuity of nakshatras. So we have May 18th, 19th, and 20th, for the most part, this movement of the moon through Scorpio, and again, in each of these nakshatras. And again, just to go back, if you've been watching this, you've been seeing the days of the week change, the nakshatras change, the tithi change, or the lunar phase change. And again, this is what I do in my forecasts, is I do a daily forecast based on all these things, right? And again, I just post the link again if anyone's interested. But of course, the moon, one of the things we focus on is it's debilitated there in Scorpio. And yes, it's because it's opposite those things of Taurus, where we talked about the moon being stable and solid. In Scorpio, they're restless, and there's that sort of emotional, turbulence potentially underneath it all. And so we're trying to stabilize the mind and heart. And again, moon in Scorpio, there's often this, it can be a kind of icy exterior, which is often even a sort of disconnect. Literally, the person is often somewhat disconnected from all of the turmoil that's underneath. And so, again, when there are other things that are difficult, they can be very disconnected from that passion and feeling of vulnerability that's underneath. Because that's the real nature of Scorpio, is to be aware of all that vulnerability and to try to face it and to keep a lot of emotional passion going. Because again, that sort of potential for drama and upheaval is there, right? And this is unsettling for the moon. So during those days on the 18th, 19th, and 20th, moon in Scorpio can show that potential. Now, particularly on the 18th, we have a full moon. The full moon in Scorpio, again, this is an interesting time because it's where, in one sense, the moon is very powerful because it's bright. It's one of the highest sources of strength for the moon. And when the moon is bright, it actually benefits all of the beneficial planets. I've been recently revisiting that in my Shadbala course, what's called Pakshabala. When the moon is bright, it not only transfers its brightness and luminescence, or it not only embodies it, but it transfers the auspiciousness of that to all the natural benefic planets. So all the beneficial energy becomes increased when the moon is bright. But it's also in its debilitated sign where it has that turmoil. So what it can do is create a lot of energy, and that debilitated state can be really bright. We're really feeling it. So you're going to really be feeling it. We're going to really feel that drama. So again, these could be some pretty intense days. May 18th and 19th, 20th. Because again, Jupiter retrograde is also still there when we get to the 20th especially. Again, these could be other big days in May. May 20th for sure. May 18th, all of it. Because 18th it's a full moon, debilitated at its exact degree. Because the moon is debilitated at 3 degrees and 20 minutes of Scorpio. And look, the sun is at 3 degrees 20 minutes. So the moon is at its deepest debilitated state when it's full. And then 2 days later, it's exactly joined Jupiter retrograde in Jeshta. So again, there could be some huge disclosures and blowups, especially with the government and whatnot, because I do know Trump's chart. This is also right where his moon is. So there could be some huge blowups, and probably not very positive in this sense, because the retrograde Jupiter is bringing back a sense of justice, bringing something back and trying to correct it. So, but for all of us, these are days of pretty intense passion and drama that we can also really transform, because the power of Scorpio is to face our emotional weakness and transform it. Take that cool demeanor and that courage, that emotional courage, because it's ruled by Mars, which has courage, and have the emotional courage to literally go into our own heart and transform that pain into strength and into resilience. But what we need to be careful of is not just to get addicted to the drama and the adrenaline rush of blowing things up and having everybody's guts on the floor just because of the feeling of, well, I feel alive because I'm blowing everything up and everything's blowing up. And by the way, I'm just going to say this is one of the things that you can see with our president, with Trump. Just so much drama, he just can't sit still. He's got K2 moon in Scorpio. Sorry, but when the moon's in Scorpio, the person just can be addicted to drama. It doesn't mean everyone is all the time. No, of course not. But he's got a full moon. This is literally his moon. He's got the sun in Taurus and the moon in Scorpio. And this just everything is drama. Can't sit still. This is one of the problems of Scorpio, because they always need this emotional fuel, this adrenaline, this emotional adrenaline that wears everybody out. This is the problem of Scorpio in general, right? And so with the moon, it's that feeling. This is why, again, it's exalted in Taurus, where it's stable, and it's easy to be contented. That's what I said when the moon went through Taurus, where it's easy to feel contentment. I'm content to just be able to sit here and take a sip of that wonderful coffee that I made and talk to you. I'm content. I don't need to go somewhere and it's usually because we want to attack somebody else or attack a situation to get a bunch of drama happening, because this moment is not enough. I need to create some drama. So be careful of that during those days. And you can see it very clearly. And then on the 21st and 22nd, you can see very well that the moon joins K2 Saturn. Now again, on May 21st, it's in the earlier parts of Sagittarius, but you see it's crossing over this Gandanta point. Again, that's always transitional, and it's going to be mainly on the 20th that it crosses over. Yeah, this is early in the morning. So again, on the 20th and into the 21st, this will be very transformative because the moon is crossing over this Gandanta point. But it's also moving into the sign of Sagittarius, where it is for the next couple days, 21st and 22nd. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And it's, again, Jupiter, it comes after Scorpio, after the strengthening of our vulnerabilities, which comes from our relationships. Libra creates the connection. Scorpio creates the vulnerability. And then Sagittarius is the redemption beyond all the triggering and all of the lack of control that we tend to feel in Scorpio. So Scorpio is often motivated by that lack of control because we're fearful. So we're trying to control things so we're not so afraid. Sagittarius says, but wait a minute, there's hope. There's a higher answer. There's a higher purpose. This is why we're also can be very addicted to our beliefs, because it gives us an answer. And that answer gives us a lot of stability and a lot of purpose. But right now, as we said, that answer is being challenged very strongly because Ketu, Saturn are there. So again, we can feel that sense of purpose, sense of hope, and the sense that our purpose and hope is very fragile. We could feel all of that big time on May 21st and 22nd. Particularly on the 22nd, again, now we have the moon right on that Ketu Saturn. And look, they're like within 1 degree. So on May 22nd, again, there's that sense of hope and optimism and purpose. But now we really feel the pressure to it. And it's in many ways, it's the awareness that says, I don't really know what to believe anymore. I don't really know what to think anymore about what's going on. We could say belief. We often tell ourselves, I don't really know what to think anymore. But it's really, I don't know what to believe anymore. Because we're thinking it. We're already thinking it. So it's like, I thought the world was a certain way. I don't even know what it's about anymore. I thought the EU was a bloc. I thought Europe was Europe with these countries that were cooperating, and now Brexit comes and this. I thought that was going to be something. Now that's not it. I thought U.S. politics and democracy was this way. Now that's not it. I thought Justin Trudeau in Canada was this way. Now there's stuff with him. I thought this was that way. I thought Notre Dame this. I thought that, it's like everything is just getting put into the meat grinder now. And we don't know where it's going to wind up. So expect a lot of that awareness, certainty, and uncertainty. And the creative principle here, the creative option, in fact, the only option, and the only option there has ever been, is to stop looking for the world to give you this illusion of certainty. Guess what? It never was certain. This is what the mystics have always been telling you. I'm waiting for all the great gurus, and they do kind of say this once in a while, but I'm waiting for them to just go, nah, 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 nah. Now you finally understand what I'm talking about, right? Especially in the Western world. Because in the Western world, we've been living under this illusion of stability and certainty for quite a while. A lot of the rest of the world has been uncertain and in upheaval and chaos for a long time. And now in the Western world, we're visiting a lot of that chaos. And so, but the world has never been stable, solid, or certain. And so the opportunity, even on this, with this moon going through Sagittarius, is to really connect with God's grace, with Guru's wisdom. Again, not just with the moon going through it, but in a general sense. Ketu Saturn in Sagittarius is shattering your beliefs. And that includes about, you might say, oh, I'll always believe in Hinduism, or I'll always worship, Ma Durga or Shiva or this or that. Yeah, but it's shattering your illusion about what worship is. You think worship is the point. The worshiping isn't the point. The sadhana, the spiritual practice, the technique, the methodology, the relentless focus on liberation beyond this earth is the point. And that includes this earth and these forms of worship in any context. In all contexts, in all forms. Because all gurus say, don't worship me. I'm glad you love me and you benefit from my teachings, but do what I tell you. Well, that means meditate. Do the practices. That's all that ever matters. And that's all that will ever matter as far as the ultimate truth, the ultimate liberation, the ultimate sense of peace, joy, fulfillment. It never comes from anything external. That's just a facade. Always. Even your capacity to enjoy anything is your capacity. It has nothing to do with the thing. Like my capacity to enjoy my nice beverage, right? And I need a drink, by the way. It's all based on my capacity to enjoy it. The beverage, somebody else could not enjoy a beverage no matter what it is. They're drinking it and they're just thinking about how angry they are or whatever it might be. So that capacity to not just enjoy but to understand and comprehend is totally up to you. In fact, that's why you're here, is to keep elevating it. That's why you're here with a body at a moment in time. And any level of comfort and stability that you have in your life is supposed to be an opportunity for you to know the self. This is why these great gurus say all the time, you have a lot less time than you think. You think you're going to be here forever. And to the ego, we think we're going to live forever. But again, you have much less time than you think. So assert and do yoga and do the practices and attain liberation in this very lifetime. These are Swami Shivananda quotes that I kind of paraphrase. But this is what Swami Shivananda used to say all the time. Assert, assert, assert. Do japa, do yoga, eat little, talk less, and attain liberation in this very lifetime, or something like that. You know? So I'm saying this so clearly now because in talking about this part of the zodiac, again, we tend to just get very hung up on the external, very much on the world we live in. And yes, it's important, but the great benefit of having this K2 Saturn hovering around each other until October is it's a great point of focus to not just believe, but to practice. Saturn only cares about practice, and ultimately God only cares about practice. Yama, who is the actuating deity of Saturn, Lord Yama, only cares about the practice. I don't care what you believe. What did you do? That's all. That's the measure of our karma, is what you did. And Saturn is the last planet that says, here's what you did. And this is why you're in the place you're in, because of this thing that you did. I don't care what you thought about it. Here's what you did, and here's the results. Now, are you powerful enough to face it and do something different toward your higher self and face your fears and commit? So K2 on Saturn is bringing this relentless focus, and in Sagittarius is saying, beyond all of your beliefs, it's great that you have these beliefs, but put them into practice. And again, this last thing before I move on, I do absolutely think this is why we're seeing so much pressure on churches and burn and all of this. It's not just metaphoric, it's metaphysical in the sense of the abuses of the church, of manipulating the masses through propaganda and the power structures of the church that needs to change. Now again, we can be bitter and angry and say, well, I hope the damn things blow up. I hope they all go away and all this. That's not the point. That's literally not the point, because everyone, every generation, every person, every culture needs to have some places of worship. That's why these places are important, because they're congregating points. They're places where energy is, temples are sacred. Religions, once they become organized, become corrupt. So it's the opportunity, not just the opportunity, but the necessity to build the next world on the structure of the old. So as much as we want to say, well, I hope they all go away because they're all terrible and whatnot, look, nature abhors a vacuum. There's already the structures there of a spiritual legacy. Just like there were governmental legacies that we've come from that had slavery and had all these things that we don't do anymore. But we've taken the democratic ideals and we've built something better, although that's in need of dismantling and restructuring as well. All of that restructuring is happening. This is literally what we're seeing. This is why I keep lumping governments and churches and all that together. It's power structures. So out of the shards of the old, we can rebuild a new spirituality that's inclusive. In fact, we must. That's the challenge. There's no reason to just get hung up on the bitterness of the past. It also means we don't repeat it. But we have to create the new. We have to create what's next. We have no choice. And again, often this is the only time we create something new. And by the way, again, I'm not just talking about the world. I'm talking about you. You do the same thing. You screw something up until it's in such disrepair that it's utterly decimated and destroyed before you start to pay attention to it. Some areas in your life, I'm sure, because we all do it. And it's often not until the damn thing is completely destroyed that we actually start to put some attention and love on it. So that's what we need to do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what gets rebuilt, literally, symbolically, and literally from these religious traditions and these government traditions that are in need of improvement. I don't know how long it's going to take. Some things will take less time, but that's what we're doing now. That's what it is. Because the people that are affected, that love the beauty of Notre Dame and the culture and the history and all of that, and that part can be preserved and must be, but taken to the next level. So, got onto that a little bit because it's such an important area. And again, this May 21st and 22nd, we might see some big things happen around some of these ideas. And in your life, it's a great time to really connect with the depth, not just the emotional or the surface problems. So then 23, 24, and into the 25th, Moon goes into Capricorn. And it's going to be getting an aspect from Mars here as well. So, the moon, when the moon is in Capricorn, there's a lot of, it's where we have to focus and commit those things that inspire us, also compel us to make a commitment to them, even like I'm talking about, and move to the next level. This is why Saturn in Sagittarius is so powerful, because it's the ruler of Capricorn, which is about focus and commitment, putting into practice what you believe, not just believing it and thinking that's enough. Because this is the illusion of our beliefs as well. We think, oh, well, no, I believe in this. Okay, great. Next. We all believe in something. Everybody believes in something. And again, it's great. It's great that the belief is a good one. But as far as your soul being transformed, that comes through practice, not belief. And that's all about Capricorn. Putting it into practice, not just believing it and getting high on the belief. We're also high on our beliefs because we think it makes us high. It makes us high and mighty. Again, this is the negative quality of Jupiter and Sagittarius. Is there's a high and mighty, pious, pompous thing that can come out. And we all have it to some extent. We all think our beliefs are the right ones and the best ones. And so, again, the moon in Capricorn and Saturn energy in general is where that becomes real. Because we can have these beliefs, but then what happens when you're alone? What happens when you're by yourself? What happens when you face the fear of death? When you really face it? What happens when you're on your deathbed? Well, what happens is the truth of all that stuff comes out. This is why I said Saturn is only concerned, and Yama, the deity of Saturn, is only concerned with what did you do. This is why you'll see people, they're an atheist their whole life. They preach atheism, then on their deathbed they're like, oh no, I believe in God. Is it too late? Now that they have to face it, they go back on it because there's no more time, and the reality of what maybe their beliefs were is there, and they're afraid. So again, Moon in Capricorn for these days, good days for solitude, stillness, introspection. Right? And that's the 23rd, 24th, 25th. 26, 27, 28, and into the 28th. So 26, 27 especially, Moon is in Aquarius. Now that's the next sign ruled by Saturn, which has to do with sharing those commitments and those deeply held convictions with the world, trying to make the world a better place. Again, in Capricorn, we're very much working through our own relationship with endings and time and putting into practice what we believe. We have to work through it first within ourselves before we can share it. Does that make sense? Otherwise, the things we share are also these fearful, disconnected ideologies. And this is why, again, a lot of people in the Aquarius mode share this ungrounded Sagittarius belief that they haven't really integrated. Because we can, again, get out and preach to the world, again, and the preach is the Sagittarius, to the world is the Aquarius, but there's nothing authentic about it because we haven't really worked through it in Capricorn and sat there in solitude and worked through it. Okay? So again, Aquarius, for those couple of days, it's a time on the 26th and 27th to really share the authentic beliefs, the authentic values. It's better to share something authentic, even to get up. I mean, just think about it. Isn't it better to see someone share like their vulnerabilities and their uncertainties and their confusions and share some of the pain and their worries? That's Capricorn. Isn't it compelling? I don't know, maybe some of you have heard me talk about my story a little bit here and there, where I came from and some of the difficulties I had with my father and, some of the pain that brought and stuff that I'm still kind of working through. It's compelling because it's real. It's better to share things that are real than to just preach when there's nothing connected. There's nothing congruent about it, right? So on those days, those dates of Aquarius, the 26th and 27th, share your authentic truth. Share your authentic, what you really know, and what you've really worked through, and not just, be careful about preaching and not doing the work of being authentic, because it also rings very hollow when you see someone who's not sharing something real. This is the disconnect you're seeing, right? That they haven't gone through that Capricorn sort of trial by fire, or trial by solitude. That's the biggest trial we have in life. We're addicted to other people and contact. The trial is not even by fire, it's by solitude. Solitude is like the fire, being alone. And then on the 28th and 29th and into the 30th, Moon is in Pisces, where we let go of the world. We even let go of that social component to the world and want to merge with that which is beyond the world, even beyond the world of people liking us or sharing something or helping others or all this stuff that we put a lot of attention on as the sort of culmination of our life here. There's something beyond that. We need to not just look at this society and this culture of people and I could change the world and make it great. Yeah, we all have that idea, and it's great. It drives me a lot. It drives a lot of my motivations is to do something good for the world. That's very Aquarius. But then there's something beyond that, which is like, well, but regardless, no matter what I do, this world is what it is. And this world is not me. I'm in the world, but not of the world. Again, this is a lot of where we get stuck. Because we have a very hard time realizing that no matter what happens here, the wins and the losses, the ups and downs, we are truly beyond that. We're beyond all of it. And that's what we need to connect to and cultivate a relationship with. So on those days, May 28th, 29th, and 30, Moon in Pisces, very much about that sort of romantic, metaphysical nature. Jupiter's going to be aspecting on the 30th. That should be a beautiful day with the Moon in Revati at the very end of the zodiac and aspected by Jupiter especially. Could be a very beautiful time. Remember, beginning of the month when the Moon went through, Mercury and Venus were there. A long time ago. It seems like last month I said that, right? Okay. And then finally, the Moon ends up May 31st in Aries. And the Moon in Aries is where it starts over again, and it's a time of new beginnings. By the way, people can, I'm not going to scroll up and read any questions, but people could post a few questions in there, especially about what I talked about, and I'll see if I want to answer them, like if there's something that's reasonable to answer, and I'll start checking in a bit. But again, the end of the month, the last day, we start with the Moon in Aries. And this Moon in Aries, again, is about new beginnings. It's about starting things, and this feeling after Pisces where we're letting go. And Pisces is literally also like that in-between life state, that past life, that unembodied state, right? Even the dream state, very much about Pisces. Well, Aries is like when you wake back up from the dream. Each day starts anew. Each day is a rebirth, because you could have died in your sleep, but you woke up again. Your body is alive and animating and moving around. That's all Aries energy. Just like you're born. You were born, you came from a past life state, an embryonic state, in between life state, which was very much like a dream. And then you popped out and you were born in a physical body to be animated. So that's a big quality and power of May 31st with the moon in Aries, and it's also joined Venus. And that brings a real quality of relationships and wanting to get along with others. It's also, as I said earlier, very passionate. So it could be a very passionate day as well with your beloved and with your lovers and people that you love, friends and whatnot, to share energy. But it's also very much just about creativity and enjoyment. Okay. So I do see a couple questions. It says, does debilitated Mercury create difficulties when it comes to writing? Referring back to the beginning. Well, it can. It can also be when Mercury. Okay. Again, everything is relative. You want to understand back to the beginning. The important thing is to not just look at one thing. You're just saying debilitated, but that Mercury has what's called Nitya Bhanga, which means the debilitation is modified, and you're not seeing that at all. So, for example, Einstein had Mercury debilitated and Venus in Pisces. So the moment you're talking about, it wasn't just Mercury was debilitated. It was with an exalted Venus. Okay? So it's very creative when that happens. And often when Mercury is debilitated, it gets Nitya Bhanga from Venus because Venus is close by. So again, you don't want to look at just one thing. Again, it can create difficulties, but maybe not. It depends on other things. So, not the greatest answer, but the real answer is, like you'll often get if you talk about one small facet of one planet and then attach it to a very big thing. Again, it might sound like debilitated Mercury is a big thing, and the point is you're making it bigger than it is. That's the real thing to learn, is that you're making it bigger than it is. It's not as big as you think to, in and of itself, do anything. Right? As you would imagine. Einstein had a Gemini rising, so Mercury was his ruling planet, and it was debilitated in Pisces. And he was Einstein. But again, it was joined Venus, which was exalted. It was also joined Saturn, which is the ninth lord. So there was a lot of power there. So one of the things I'll say is when Mercury's in Pisces, it actually promotes the imagination a lot. And I've seen people actually who have Mercury in Pisces in the natal chart be very creative writers. And they have a very creative imagination, but sometimes the nuts and bolts of the thoroughness and the hard work and the details and the precision of Mercury in Pisces, they might have a hard time expressing it the way they want. But again, it's just one placement. Anything else could come and change it. Literally anything. You could have so many things. Nitya Bhanga, Venus, certainly. Any kind of relationship with Saturn, even Jupiter aspect, all kinds of things can support it. Okay, will this year be a bad time to get married if Ketu and Saturn are transiting your 7th house? Well, I would say it's not the best placement for it, of course, and you understand why. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask the question. Saturn going through the 7th isn't necessarily, quote, bad, because Saturn promotes 7th house things, right? Because Saturn brings commitment and whatnot. So with Saturn, I don't dislike it as much. And again, here's the point, beyond the like or dislike, because that's certainly something there, but it's more about what you often see happen, right? And when Saturn goes through the 7th house by transit, we're looking to get a lot of structure in our life and in our relationships. Many times this can bring us to getting married. And again, you have to look at the marriage karma of the person to see what kind of partner they'll have and what their relationship karma is about. People get married all the time when Saturn's going through the 7th house, especially with Ketu also there. So whether or not it's good, it definitely shows that it could happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad to see that you have to look at the person's relationship karma and what kind of partners they're likely to get. You look at their dashas. Again, astrology is never that simple, okay? But I answered your question based on the spirit in which you wrote it, which is all things considered. It's not a indicator to say Saturn and Ketu in your 7th house. It's a good time to get married because you're using good and bad. Again, I want you to understand, and you probably hear this like a broken record, especially from any astrologers that are really worth their salt, that are worth anything. They never can really answer these questions very well. If this thing will this general category work out? Or is this one very narrow thing that you're making bigger than it is good or bad? Or going to help or hinder some huge thing that has 10,000 possible ways of modifying or detracting? So all of these questions are in the same bucket. This is why when I said I'll look and see if people have questions, usually the reason I don't answer a lot of questions is it's often these kinds of questions, and I'm not trying to be insulting. It's better, like, again, I just spoke for an hour about all kinds of things. No one has questions about any of that, which is fine. This is why I often don't answer them. It's often these kinds of questions. And again, I'm not upset about it, but the thing to understand is people should study astrology. It's meant to be studied so that you actually know these things. And I don't mean know how to delineate whether Saturn Ketu in the 7th is good for marriage, but whether or not, like, who you really are, and what all this energy really is, and what your karma really is, and what relationships really are, and what Saturn really is, what Ketu really is, what Mercury really is, what Pisces really is, and what all of this is. And I'm not trying to be, again, I'm not trying to be obnoxious about it. I'm just being honest. That there's so much assumption. It's like, for example, is that, again, because astrology is because it's very accessible and we can understand quite a bit when we hear it explained well. It's like, okay, I understand that because that makes a lot of sense because I'm feeling the same thing they're describing, so it really works. Okay, so then we have this illusion that we understand a lot more than we think, especially how it actually works. So we have this idea that, okay, well, I know Mercury's about communication and skills, and that could be writing and speaking, so I get that. And there's this thing where it's not good, called debilitated, so I get that. So now these two things, I understand these things, so now I have a conclusion. So is this right? Again, it's very easy to create an illusion of understanding. So I even talked about at the beginning, they say it's better to truly understand it than to not understand it at all. All I'm saying is be careful with any kind of conclusions you draw. And again, the reason I talk about this is because people draw so many incorrect conclusions about their chart based on a limited, very beginner level understanding. You would never do this about, let's say, medicine or quantum physics or anything else that's just as detailed as astrology. You would never think that because you know a little bit about, let's say, chicken pox, or that you know a little bit about, diabetes, that you would ever be able to diagnose or make a really strong judgment about anything. You don't even think that because you know it's much more complicated than that. It's the same with astrology, so just keep that in mind for sure. And so, Lagitati Avashtas, yes. So this quality of planet in the 5th. So here's the way it's a good question. Those terms are really quite interesting. And again, the English term is the English word we apply to a Lagitati Avashta where a planet is, quote, ashamed. That's an English word. It's actually, again, there's one that's called Garvita, which is proud, which is another. I actually see them as being kind of similar in the fact that, like the Garvita, I believe, is when it's exalted. I think it's called Garvita. Or it's another one, it's maybe Malatrikona or something positive, it calls it proud. I actually see it kind of similar because look at things that are the fifth house. When something is in the fifth house, or the fifth house in general, it's literally called the Putra Bhava, or the child house. And with child, think of the way we are with children, or things that we love a lot. Think of something that you really love a lot. And the more you love something and you sort of covet it, you're also, it's not that you're ashamed of it, but you're very vulnerable about and very sensitive and touchy to criticism about it, to you want to protect and you want to hide the bad part. Now you're starting to get what I'm saying. Think about what someone would do to protect their children and the shame that their children might, the negative quality of the problems being exposed about their children. And how, again, they wouldn't admit, no parent would admit that I'm ashamed of my child. You wouldn't ever hear a parent say it. You'll never hear a parent say, I'm ashamed of my child. Actually, you will when they kill somebody or something like that. But other than that, you'll never hear it. But think about that energy of things that we covet really deeply. Something that we love so much that we kind of protect it from something negative. And again, on some level, I don't actually remember the Sanskrit word and seen alternative explanations for it. But I've seen it called ashamed. And what I've gleaned from it is that kind of sensitive spot that we kind of hide and protect. I have a planet. I'll bring up my chart because I have a planet in the fifth. Actually, let me bring up I'll bring up mine. The way I've seen it work, like I have this moon in the fifth, and it's in that Avashta. And I was very creative. Like I create a lot of music, especially when I was younger, very creative. It was very much about me and my personal creativity. Artists, and I'll just say this even about artists and their fifth house and the things that they create, they have this kind of, oh, it's so precious, I could never take money for this kind of illusion around this precious jewel that again, it's not shame. They're not ashamed of it, but part of the reason why they cannot want to share it is they're afraid of the ridicule, or again, it's this thing that we covet so much that what if that started to be a source of pain? How hard it would be to deal with that. So again, think of parents and think of how much they wrap up in their children and how much they might even want to protect the difficult qualities and how that might translate into something similar to shame. Because again, we have to think creatively about Sanskrit words. They refer to entire processes that English words don't really refer to. And this is what I notice in the chart of artists as well. And I literally explain this to them because the fifth house is opposite the 11th house, where artists actually want their work to be recognized publicly, yet on some level they have this uneasy relationship, this protective quality of it, and they lie to themselves all the time. Oh, this is why, it'll never be this big thing because I just do it for myself and I love it so much. Yeah, I get it. And it's also being afraid to risk putting it out there and being vulnerable and having someone ridicule it and feeling ashamed of your creation because people didn't like it. Because there's a lot to putting your heart on the line. That's maybe an easier way to explain it, as well as the fifth house isn't necessarily children, but it's what you love the most. And putting your heart on the line for something and then putting it out there so people can see it and then having people ridicule it will bring a lot of shame, right? In another sense, like for example, I can say in my chart, because I have the moon in the fifth, I've always just loved being creative, but moon is also rules my second house, which is literally like your family, like your birth family. And again, certainly not like with my sister, or even just in a general sense. It wasn't a conscious thing. But, being ashamed of my family, quote, like if I were to make that statement, I could definitely see where that's part of my nature. It's not literally ashamed of it in a conscious way now. In fact, I even talk about it, and I see it as a beautiful path, but that's because I've grown so much through it. But when I was younger, yeah, I could easily have said, my family weren't educated. They didn't come from anywhere. I didn't parade my family around. Hey, here's my dad. Here's my mom. Here we are, the bumbling, the Pasadena hillbillies from Maryland. It's like, no, I was not proud of my family. Again, it was my stage of growth, which was not very developed. And I hadn't made peace with my own power, my own creativity, my own whatever. I say family because the moon rules the second house of family. So the way to look at this Avashta is to look at what the planet rules, especially. If you got a planet in the fifth, look at what it rules and look at the people in aggregate that is represented by that. Like if it's the seventh lord, person might be ashamed of their partners. Again, ashamed is a strong word. Look at it in the context I'm describing. Venus, partners as well. Sun, maybe their father. Moon, maybe their mother. And yes, this moon definitely ashamed of my mother for many years, for many things. And again, it wasn't so conscious, especially when I was growing up. It wasn't a literal thing. It wasn't literally ashamed, but it wasn't like I was proud and showing her off. And again, it's not because she was a bad person or anything either, or that it was even in some ways that conscious. Again, these are deep lessons. And it's amazing how the Vedic people could dial this stuff in, even with a simple word. You want to understand this also about the texts. And I talk about this quite a bit. The texts are not like I've spent 10 minutes explaining something they said in one word, because that's what they did. Because they wanted the text to be succinct. They wanted people to get what the people knew what these words meant. And if you didn't know what the word meant, you didn't know how to explain it, so you couldn't do it correctly. So those words are charged. Sanskrit words are charged. And it's a whole kind of thing. So someone's sharing about their fifth house, right? And again, so you look at what these things are all about. And it's this thing that artists can go through. So it's a good question. All right, what else do we say here? And a lot of positive comments. Thank you, everybody. And Sharon, it's great to see you. Sharon's one of my great students, one of my certification course students who is kicking butt. And how does retrograde dispositor of exalted Venus affect? Well, it's just another thing that you explain. So again, great question. You explain it. Venus is exalted. Its Lord is retrograde. And we're seeing it. What is Venus? What is the Lord? What is retrograde? So that's you're welcome, Sebastian. So yeah, that's what it is. So you have to explain that. Again, this is again one of those questions. How does it affect? It affects by being what it is. You have to know what dispositors do. Have to know what Venus does. Have to know what retrograde does. And if you're talking about a specific chart, there are rulers and rulerships and all of that. And these are the things you explain. And so again, with Venus, again, first we have to look at the nature in general. If it's just in a general chart like we have now, Venus in general is bringing the exalted qualities, which, again, how would you explain that? Again, connecting our desires and the thing we find beautiful to something beyond this earth, something very, beautiful and enlightened and sort of metaphysical, right? that leads to all kinds of creativity, not just the typical sort of romance and I want attention and I want pleasure, again, which is where we can get stuck in Venus, but it's much higher potential. Again, then you understand that potential comes from its ruler, right? Jupiter. So which part of Jupiter is in that equation? It's this part, XX part. Then, what does retrograde do? What does it mean? Okay, now that part of it is retrograde. So that's, again, a blessing and a curse or this or that. So it means that part of it might be more confusing, more compelling. Again, it's when planets are retrograde, that tends to be backing up more. So perhaps the metaphysical cosmic part of it, which is the Pisces part, is not as clear. So it might be something more worldly, something more connected to people or humans and less about the higher qualities of Pisces, which are beyond. And in general, just sort of confusing. But again, that's very generic. It's very general because we're not talking about a chart. We're talking about energy, quote. We say the energy. What's the energy of? I don't know. I don't know the context of the energy. If it's just the energy, then energy is a very generic term. If it's in a chart, now we're looking at something specific. Now, there's someone's natal chart that has an ascendant. Venus is not just generally this, it's the ruler of certain houses. Jupiter's not just generally Jupiter, it's the ruler of houses. Again, then you're doing it more specifically. And it's not just happening anytime ever, it's happening within a context of dashas and other things. So again, how do they affect? They affect the way they affect, right? But there's so many possibilities with that, okay? So you want to just know that these effects always just are cumulative, right? They add up, and the thing isn't to identify them. What students can do is identify things, and then we get confused because we can identify all these things, and then the more things we can identify, the more confused we are, and the more illusion we have about it. I can identify all these things. Why don't I understand any of it? How any of it works? Because it's not identifying things isn't the point. One of my big slogans is memorization is not mastery. It's one of my little catchphrases. It doesn't matter how many things we memorize. It's not, it literally makes no difference. It's better to be able to explain 2 or 3 things with enormous depth than 15 things to just identify them, because then it's just going to confuse more than illuminate, right? So you want to keep that in mind. So anyway, I'm glad people came, and I hope this was helpful for our May 2019 forecast. And you can share this with others. Share this on your social media and other things like that. It would be great. And I'll post this one more time as well if you want to see how each day affects you. Then you can try for 50 cents. It's a 50 cents for 14 days. Now, after 14 days, there is the charge for the daily forecast to be the member, but you try it for 14 days of daily forecast. That also includes new moon and full moon forecasts, and it also includes 8 hours of classes. So you can check that out, and it's you can get daily forecasts based on those things I talked about earlier, based on those qualities of the Panchanga and all of this stuff here. This the moon changes, the nakshatra, the tithi, the rashi, there's aspects, there's conjunctions. Every day is different. It never repeats. Keep that in mind. It seems like we're all doing the same thing. Nothing ever repeats. It's a new day every day. So thanks, guys, and you all take care.